Welcome, everyone. It's July 15th, 2026, the Jupyter contributor meeting. Um, as a first announcement, we have changed slightly how we are doing the Jupyter AI meeting and Jupyter contributor meeting based on our discussion from last week. Uh, our thought is we're going to try this out, see how it is going forward, is have the Jupyter AI meeting merge with the Jupyter contributor meeting, have the Jupyter contributor meeting start at the normal time it's always usually started at, which is 9 a.m. Pacific and whatever other time zone locally, obviously. And then the Jupyter contributor meeting goes for an hour and a half, which is the combined time we had for Jupyter contributor and Jupyter AI meeting. But now we're folding the two meetings together and we're reserving time at the very start of the Jupyter contributor meeting for non-Jupyter AI topics, since those usually are briefer, and we want to make sure that there's room for the non-AI topics. And then the Jupyter AI topics were kind of float towards the end of the meeting, since those typically go longer. There's a lot of activity and excitement around those, et cetera. A lot of discussion needs to happen around those, and those can float to the end of, towards the end of the 90-minute meeting. Um, so uh, we have the HackMD up. People are joining. Thank you. Please post in the HackMD topics. And again, we'll just float the AI meeting topics towards the bottom of the list. Any questions on the meeting times? We've updated the calendar. We've announced on Zulip. Um, any any questions about our strategy? At least we're going to try out going forward for a little bit, um, or or places you think we should announce these changes. Okay. Um, we'll probably have a rough week or two while people are getting used to this new meeting time and new meeting format. Fernando, you have an item, BioJupyter.
Oh, yes, I had mentioned in the previous half hour, but it was very few people and thank you for posting the link uh, on the HackMD. I was mentioning that UCSF and UC Berkeley just made a public announcement that we're launching a new initiative in biomedical research. It's called the Baker Computational Biomedicine Initiative, and it's a collaboration basically of multiple research labs that do everything from basic biology to healthcare work. Berkeley doesn't have a medical school, but UCSF in San Francisco is the partner UC school that is basically only a medical school. It's one of the largest research hospitals in the US, for those kind of not familiar with the academic medical world in the United States. And Berkeley and UCSF are jointly launching this big program. It includes lots of things that have nothing to do with Jupyter, hiring of faculty who do basically computational biology, computing, computer science, AI research, but applied to biology, hiring a lot of postdocs. But we're also going to be hiring folks to contribute to Jupyter under the umbrella of something that we're calling BioJupyter, which is basically kind of tuning our stack for the needs of biomedical research, and that will include hiring software developers to contribute 100% to Jupyter across the stack, everything from backend infrastructure, something a little bit probably closer to Jupyter Hub and that part of the system. Things at the front end, there's going to be a lot of integration needed with where Jupyter Lab is probably going to be the key hinge point where we connect both contributions to existing things in Jupyter Lab, but also potentially for asking, okay, how can a connector to an existing tool in bioinformatics, to an existing tool in genomics, to an existing tool in microscopy be improved by exposing it to the rest of the computing that people do through Jupyter in Jupyter. And Jupyter Lab is kind of the ideal point for that. We will be making also higher, more along the direction of Jupyter AI, because a lot of this initiative is precisely around using AI as a research tool with a mandate that we do things openly, that everything is open source, everything is done towards open science, ideally with open models when viable, though obviously we still want to be able to connect to proprietary frontier models when that's appropriate. There will be teams in this space that are building custom models that are not just LLMs, but there's a lot of science being done with developing custom models with imaging data data, custom models with multimodal data, custom models, for example, using LLM style architectures, but where the quote language is, say, gene sequences and not human natural language. So this is scientific research in AI systems that go beyond general purpose LLMs, but we will want to expose that through Jupyter. And so we'll be hiring software development positions there. I'm working on the job descriptions. Literally, when I finish this meeting, I'll jump on the Google Doc to try to get that quickly wrapped up and through the HR pipeline. We'll be hiring product management and community and kind of project and community engagement folks, as well as some postdocs, but who will be working kind of with the Jupyter team. So people who really come from the science, but who are interested. Many of us in Jupyter started in kind of academic and scientific research, did postdocs connected to this type of work and ended up contributing a lot. We're also going to be hiring some of those who will partner with the bigger group of postdocs who are really focused just on the science. So that project was announced publicly last week. We'll be making a bunch of hires, hopefully in the next few weeks. Wanted to let people know. Hopefully it'll bring a lot of research, science, open science, and education kind of energy to the team and to the project. And so that's my announcement. Jason, you also know a bit about this, so I don't know if I missed anything, please go ahead.
That's awesome. Any questions for Fernando? Cool. Thanks for announcing that, Fernando. This is really, really exciting. Um, Mike.
Hi. I just wanted to flag that Jupyter Releaser had a patch release because of fast core dependency dropping some incompatible changes. And yeah, if you pinged your versions on GitHub Actions of Jupyter Releaser action, you need to update the pins in order for check release workflow to pass. And we probably need to figure out a way for the dependabot updates to work with it. Right now, they don't, I believe, because of the tags being kind of odd, with version 2 being the one that is used rather than version 1, which is what we are tagging. I will be looking into that. And the second update is that we are processing a large number of security advisories for Jupyter Lab. This is not a secret because I got really annoyed with inability to move forward there and started kind of hosting a couple of places on Zulip, etc. We are unable to merge the pull requests right now from private forks. So yeah, everyone is probably aware already that we are trying to make a security release. Hopefully, it can happen this week, but we will see. For now, GitHub bugs are preventing us from merging these pull requests. Yeah, we are in active contact with support. Maybe we'll need to make some configuration changes to work around the issues, or potentially resort to just using public PRs rather than the private forks feature. Yeah, stay tuned for that.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. Um, I have two more quick announcements. The Jupyter Foundation CFP, this is just a reminder, a bug in people's ears to remember that there's a call for proposals for community-funded initiatives. The details are linked in the notes here. And also, I'm not sure if people have seen this. We haven't advertised it very widely, but the Jupyter Foundation is hosting a half-day summit at OSS EU. It's October 6th in Prague, and planning is kicking off underway to fill half day worth of speakers. Think of it as a time to come and meet at the OSS EU conference in general, but have some time dedicated to Jupyter topics. So there's a link in the notes as well to some of the information around that. Let's see, Isabel, where's the discussion for proposals again? If you go to that link, and I'll paste it in the chat here. There's a bunch of information, including links to submit an issue on a repo, which is how we're doing the proposal submission process. Does that answer your question? Or, I mean, obviously we can start a conversation sort of anywhere about a proposal. I know some people already have some ideas about proposals that I've heard through the grapevine. One change we're making with this CFP is we're asking people to get endorsement from relevant committees or councils in Jupyter. So please shop your proposal ideas around early so that you can, get it in front of a council or committee, get a stamp of approval as an endorsement in your proposal. And those are due September 9th. All right. We now have a new agenda item, and we're getting to the AI portion of the meeting, as in, we've covered a lot of topics that were non-AI. So, Zach, feel free to add Jupyter AI topics. I know we always have a lively discussion around that, and this time we're combining the Jupyter AI meeting and the Jupyter contributor meeting. But we have Vidar.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a reference to pull request. I think I discussed this previously when I was here about fixing some of the SPDX license things for the deprecation of how licenses in the PyProject TAML. So I want to open that multiple places, but I thought I would start with the Jupyter Lab extension template. So just wanted to get some eyes on that, and if that's okay, then I can start opening pull requests other places as well. And on the AI side, I already discussed this a bit on what I thought was the Jupyter AI time slot, but now that Zach is here, it's even better. If I wanted to do contributions to change a lot of the code from using direct file system access to using the Contents Manager API, would that be something that would be quickly reviewable and mergeable, or is there some, do you think there would be some friction there?
No, I think it'd be fine. I think what we need to do is separate out the out-of-band APIs from the actual just reading content. I think there's a lot of direct file system calls using file watchers and things like that that would break the mental model using Contents API.
Yeah, so some of it is fine to live on the file system, right? And then some things like the tools specifically, right? At least in the Jupyter one or other tools, their Contents Manager is the one that makes the most sense because that's what Jupyter Lab is using, right? Or Frontend is using.
Yes. So I don't think that would be controversial at all.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And you feel free to ping me on that to review that if you want someone to pair up with you. You do write some code.
All right, that leads us to the end of the agenda, but we're building out this agenda as we go here. I see somebody else typing something in right now. I feel a bit like we're taking off the plane and paving the end of the runway as we're going.
Yeah,
see if I can hover and yeah, who's typing? Is that
that's
Zach?
Me, that's me.
It is Zach. All right, take it away, Zach.
There's a so this is kind of dovetailing with the conversations about the CFPs. I was trying to quickly drum up the link. Sorry, I'm late today, but the drum up a link to a discussion going on in the YCRDT org that is around kind of some critical issues. Thank you, Mike. Because I think you've been following that. There's basically some brokenness in dependencies that are going to become kind of increasingly more critical, I think, for this ecosystem, the Jupyter ecosystem, around the CRDT algorithms on the server side, so the Rust implementations. And there's some inconsistency between the Rust and the JavaScript TypeScript libraries and APIs. And so as those issues have slowly been raised over time from Jupyter's community, there's been a little bit of response back, fair, warranted, of basically like, we're a bunch of volunteers. Like, the hard part for us is this is people donating their time to solve these things. So like, while we understand that this is urgent for you, like, we need resources. So I think, I think it's really great for them to express and helpful for them to express, so that we can know that, and also, maybe pursue those resources. And I think it's fair, even though it's not sitting in the Jupyter ecosystem, to use some of these CFPs as a way to kind of partner with them and solve some of these issues and get some funding to solve some of these issues. So yeah, I think Mike's thread there is one example of that. So yeah, I just wanted to put this on people's radar. I know like the CRDT stuff is kind of a limited group of people working on that, because it is a deeply technical part of the stack. And so there's few hands carrying that load, but it is kind of becoming an increasingly more important load. So just how we don't own that part in terms of this ecosystem, and our governance doesn't own that part. So we are a little bit at the mercy of what these guys can kind of do and keep up with. And so just want to be good colleagues and collaborators with them, and see if we can kind of route resources their way. So if you have, the CFP is one option. One interesting thing about the CFP is, what I'm trying to get from different people while talking about this stuff is, what is the size of a grant that's worth you going after and your organization going after? And are we meeting that with the CFP? So I've asked, Sylvan as one organization, Mike has been a good kind of representative of that as another organization that'll engage these CFPs. Those guys, I want to make sure that it's worth their while to submit a proposal, and that the size of funding that they can get is worth that time and actually useful. But others who might have resources to help in these kinds of parts of the project, I can connect you with those folks and see if we can work on it. So that was one thing. I probably have other topics, but I need to think about it for a second. I don't know if there's any questions or comments on that particular point. Yeah, I see your question. Christy says, where do you want that feedback, Zach? Is this more of a question of where should we post it, or like post that feedback, or?
Well, sorry, I think I couldn't tell if you were opening up a discussion or to have now.
No.
The feedback could be now. Or
no, that was more of
that
was more of an FYI for folks. But I wanted to just, if people had thoughts and that, or questions, if I didn't give enough information, that FYI, I wanted to make sure they had space to speak. It was also giving me a chance to think about some other topics around the AI stuff. No direct feedback needed now, unless folks have questions or.
I'll say I have lots of thoughts about this, and I talk about it with Chris Holgraf a decent amount. So there's possibly not that much that's like brand new.
Yeah.
But yeah, the larger the amount, the more likely you are to get someone in for a sustained amount of time, and the more likely you are to get someone new in. And so that, I think, is that's like a sort of major factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think maybe the thing I'm flagging for this particular part of the meeting is this may be a invisible part of the stack that's not really receiving attention for those kinds of resources. So I just want to point out that it's kind of like a little bit of a more boring part of the stack, but kind of a critical one. Yeah, exactly. CodeMirror and ZMQ also being areas where we might want to direct resources. Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
There was a chat. There was a conversation in the Zulip channel a few months ago, maybe last year, around like paying for Zulip, and it was kind of an interesting one, because I think the conclusion was we don't need any of the features of a paid Zulip. So then it was sort of, the conversation pivoted a little bit around like, but don't we want to like sort of put our money where our mouth is and like show that we appreciate this? And I think there's an interesting kind of question around the amount of money that's required versus like something that just demonstrates that we care, right? Like you could imagine the Jupyter Foundation putting $5,000 into a, as a donation to one of these open source projects that we rely upon. It's not going to really, it's not enough to like do a substantial piece of work, which I guess is why for me that it doesn't fit in a call for proposals, because $5,000 isn't going to do, really pay for much to like achieve a milestone. But it is an interesting sort of demonstration of we care about the things that we depend upon, and we want to demonstrate what sort of sharing some resources would look like. So that feels that the call for proposals is not the right pathway, but a very cool and interesting angle on like sharing, sort of a solidarity across the ecosystem kind of connected way of supporting people and supporting ourselves in the act of supporting them, right? Because we do need them to be healthy and sustainable.
Yeah, it's a really good point. What has happened a little bit this year is that for better or worse, I don't know if this is something I'd advocate for for that particular type of example, was bring those needs to some body. So we've just had the executive council basically try to take in those asks, and then we do get a budget. Like we have a pool of funds for kind of those like more admin level infrastructure that are small. Like we need to pay for a GitHub account, we need to pay for CI, we need to pay for this. Zulip would be an example. And those funds have been coming from basically an ask. Yeah, exactly. The EC is asked for some number of dollars a year from the foundation. So the foundation gives those funds. And then if the ask needs to go up or change, it just becomes a request from the EC to the foundation and then back. So that is covering gaps right now. It's like plugging holes as they come up. It's not maybe the longest sustainable option, but, and I know that wasn't the point of your particular point. Was if somebody wants to contribute and has smaller amounts they can contribute to having an avenue for that, where it is really solving a direct need, but isn't really a call for proposal.
Yeah, and I think really in a sense, there's this interesting question with the call for proposals around, we sort of would like them to write an application in the call for proposals, right? Like with endorsements from Jupyter maintainers. And that would be pretty cool. And we could maybe sort of set that as like a success metric that they could actually start to, like the interconnected ecosystem could also apply. And I realized as I'm speaking, obviously that's opening up a whole other thorny, like, what is the purpose of these calls for proposals? Are we funding current Jupyter maintainers or the broader ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera? So there's sort of, more questions every time you ask one of these things. But the other thing that I think is more concrete is finding funds for a workshop. So I think like 20,000 is a really good amount to fly people together and work for 3-4 days together, and that might actually be like a good sort of precursor to building more of these connections, more substantial than a $1,000 donation. Folks, I'm so sorry, I actually have to jump to another meeting, so just sort of came by, dropped some hot takes and left. But I'll try and come to more of these. We're moving the Jupyter book meeting so that more of us can come along and kind of cross-pollinate with this meeting. So I'm excited to join more.
There's some conversation happening in chat. Let's just have the conversation here. Mike?
I don't know if it's a good idea, but I guess the conversation was trying to marry this um, kind of token of appreciation uh, idea of giving back to the dependencies that the projects that Jupyter depend on without necessarily obliging them to apply for a larger grant in the CFP process. Uh, Although both of these are nice outcomes, um, one option would be to just have a proposal which proposes, hey, we would like to contribute back to the core dependencies. And I think in the chat we listed Marjak's code mirror, YJS, SystemQ. There are probably other, and just specify a total amount that we would like to distribute and decide who should be responsible for the kind of rewards. Should it be EC? Should it be SSC? And kind of have this one-off fund from Jupyter. And then if we find that there is a high return on investment, if it is admissible to use this term in this context, but if it seems that there is an actual benefit and there's a mutual appreciation and this helps this dependencies grow and helps Jupyter as a consequence, then we can repeat that in the next CFP cycle and adjust the amount without requiring our upstreams to apply to the CFP. So yeah, this is just an idea.
I think long term, we'd want that to be not dependent on a CFP process. Long term, I think we'd want that to be good practices, a slice of sort of dedicated budget each year that doesn't have to be asked for. Um, but I agree, starting out with a CFP is a good way to get it kick-started, to experiment with it without committing too much to a structure or amount, et cetera. And maybe that gets rolled into a more permanent, like down upstream slice. And it doesn't have to be a ton, I think. Like you say, $5,000 across all the dependencies is probably not like it's not paying for people to develop a feature like Kirsty was saying. But I'm sure it would go a long way towards YJS being friendly to Project Jupyter if they got $500 or $1,000 or something. Yeah. One thorny issue, and I think we're navigating this by sort of capping the amount at a sort of an honorarium amount, is if you start getting into the expectation that we're going to pay for all development of something, that gets expensive really fast. And it has interesting interactions with sort of the open source nature and the volunteer contributors in a project. So I guess what we decided in the community workshops is we aren't paying for people's time, but we'll give an honorarium to the organizer of a community workshop. And that sort of navigates it as here's a thank you and appreciation for all the time you're spending organizing a workshop, for example. But we're not sort of thinking about this as paying for your time to organize a workshop. Um, One issue with the CFP process was changed so that opening an issue is submitting the CFP. It's a little awkward though, because obviously you can't submit the CFP in that sense until like the deadline. When the deadline passes, that's when we see what was submitted. Um, it'd be good to have a place to have these conversations sort of fleshing out these ideas. We can do that outside of the CFP repo, on a Zulip channel, we probably need to do something a little more permanent than these meeting notes. But my guess is it's okay to open an issue on that CFP repo, kind of like we did last time for in progress CFPs. Nobody's going to bite your head off if you open an issue, outline an idea, and have some proposal text that we sort of flesh out before the deadline. Okay, Zach, you added an item. Ooh, a long item. Excellent.
Well, I just want to make sure that people, I wanted to point people to there's two proposals that have been open on Jupyter AI that are really around design for like what AI in Jupyter looks like by default. And so I would encourage folks to go look at that proposal, those two proposals, and the order of those proposals. Ideally, this like I want to kind of encourage folks who have bandwidth and are interested in this topic to really, really start to lean in on it right now and feel full authority to engage that conversation, share opinions, drive the design. Like I think it's easy sometimes when somebody kind of starts a topic to feel like they own the topic, and that's not true at all. Like I know David Hugh from AWS has kind of initiated those topics, but like it's open for everyone to kind of engage and help design. I think that the feedback I've seen consistently across the board is that Jupyter AI, that particular package, pipping installing that package gives an experience that's not the most intuitive to get started. Like it doesn't necessarily even work right out of the box. Like there's quite a few steps to get up going. It's not exactly consistent with what people know when they use tools similar. And so, like we're not there yet. And I kind of think we need to get there faster than we are. And so, I just want to get folks engaged and interested and involved in that particular part. I don't think the designs of the current system are bad. I just think that we're like heavily optimizing for API design without having something easy to use and increasing kind of usage and popularity up front. And I think in this particular feature, that might be out of order. We might want to build something that people are excited to use and using on their daily and giving us feedback there. And we can kind of continually improve and construct APIs underneath it. A lot of that's like UI, like the UI. I'll say we have two experiences. We have like this Jupyter Light AI and this Jupyter AI that has a heavy server component. And they have two different experiences. And the Jupyter Light AI is probably more closely aligned with what people are used to seeing with AI tools in applications like Jupyter. And then Jupyter AI is kind of taking this more experimental paradigm to how you interact with these things. And it's cool in its own way. It's very powerful if you are deploying your own system and you understand how to extend it. But that's not kind of our main use case. So there's a lot of work we've had, a lot of conversations we had about how do we really bring those two things together and make them one Jupyter AI product or project and experience for users. I just want people to like continue that, push for that, get involved in that, and if there's anything I can do specifically to kind of encourage folks there and drive conversation, let me know. I'm happy to accelerate that however I can. But I want, at the very minimum, I want people to feel full authority to jump in and get involved and help wherever you want. So please engage in those proposals.
Fernando, you unmuted. Do you want to chime in?
No, sorry, that was accidental.
Oh, sorry. I did want to hear, Jeremy, you're here. What are your thoughts about the Jupyter AI versus Jupyter Light AI differences and consolidation?
I think I'm going to say something similar to what Zach said, and also what we discussed at the workshops, the last one, especially in May. I think from an end user perspective, this is still very confusing. Like everything is confusing. It's it's not clear. Like I know we discussed it, and there is maybe something we could do like in the very short term by just making docs or like having like an entry point for end users, like that would just guide them to which package they can use as of right now, because right now they cannot be installed together, they cannot work together. So this is not going to happen like in just a few days, unfortunately. So maybe there is this kind of thing we could do in the meantime. Like just, I think we have some documentation somewhere, maybe on one of the Jupyter websites that explains the two approaches from the two projects. But then otherwise, yeah, I think uh, there's still the idea of trying to have everything, available when you install Jupyter AI, like the Python package, which is kind of the thing facing users. So right now I'm just mostly talking about users because yeah, this is like a very important like I mean extension developer are also like a crowd that we should consider for sure, like so that they can build on top of what these two projects are trying to expose, but that the immediate kind of user experience of these Jupyter AI projects, yeah, I think there are still a few things we could do like to so that they at least match what the other, I don't know, like IDs or editors provide. But yeah, like if we are able to kind of have both Jupyter Lite AI and Jupyter AI together, kind of installed together, and then have the users know which one they are using and why, and have some kind of default behavior that is okay, like a good default, then that would be great. Like there is this discussion, I think, in one of the issue, like to have the Jupyter Lite AI be Jupyter not, like trying to replace the existing one, or can deprecate the existing Jupyter not and then have only one version that runs only in the browser. That case it will run in Jupyter Lab, but also in Jupyter Lite. That is still not clear, but it's probably like yeah, something like that. So as you can see, like as I was talking, I was thinking like, okay, this is still very confusing. But yeah, if someone wants to add something, I see that you have your hand raised, Zach.
This particular project, what is I think killing us a little bit is we don't really have somebody owning the decision making on like experience, like target experience. So what you have is like a couple of folks kind of just doing experimental like side and competing because it's like I don't actually know. And I kind of feel like we almost should have like either a person or a couple of people who want to kind of own this is like they're going to spend a couple of days saying this is if I were to just show you what a user sees, and I'm going to draft what that target is, and that's the experience. Let's build towards that, and then the rest of us, yeah, the rest of us basically said, yeah, that I let's build towards that experience. So there was more like alignment on that. I think nobody feels comfortable having that authority too. Like I don't know who that should be, and maybe it's a council of 2 or 3 people, just so that it's not on one person. Of course, Fernando dropped when I said this, but I do think that like we would really benefit from having an explicit, like all agreed upon 1 to 3 people who are going to like actually spend some time setting the target for what the experience is, and then we build towards that. If that makes sense. Like I think we kind of have, and it's drawing from what we already have, but right now we're not. There's kind of misalignment everywhere, like even within certain projects. So it's hard to say no. Like when a PR comes in and someone wants to add a button on the page, it's hard to say no to them because you feel like, do I have the authority to say no? I don't really personally like that, but instead, if the decision was already made before that even comes in, it was clear that's what we're building towards, and then what we build underneath it is an engineering problem that's fine, like in terms of APIs and infrastructure and all that stuff. That's technical, decisions to be made. That's a little easier to make once it's clear what the output or the result for the user is going to be. And I think that would be better for the users as well. And it does take a little bit of we may not people who end up building towards the target experience might not agree with the target experience. That's okay, right? That's the reality of how software works. Is sometimes you just once the alignment decision is made, everybody jumps on on board with it and builds towards it. So that's just a meta comment. I feel like we should have that discussion too of who could we put kind of in place as the responsible for driving the target, and then the rest of us opt in to kind of following that design or whatever that target is. And I can start a discussion on that. Having issues dedicated design would help totally. In fact, I was even trying to see. Yeah, it's a good point. Not sure where they would be open to either, Mike. Yeah, we just open some discussion on the Jupyter AI contrib already, or I don't know if there's groups of discussions with threads that you can have, or it could be a repo, but that's probably the place to do it. I also think that another good use of funding from the CFP would be if somebody knows a designer who would be willing to contract their time for a 6-month period, write a proposal for that. I know that I think, yeah, exactly. So, if folks have contacts, let's encourage them and partner with them and get a CFP in place. But I think that's a critical next step. Go ahead, Jason.
Maybe one quick word first. There is currently the Jupyter AI contrib, right? And that page lists a body of people that are supposed to be decision makers. But is that the kind of council that you were thinking about, or
it could be those people? It could be a subset. Yeah. I don't know if I feel qualified. I don't know if everybody feels qualified on that particular council to hold that role. I think the harder part here is not who ends up being that person, but the fact that everybody else will back that person. The harder problem to solve, right, is we've done this in Jupyter where we've hired contributor community managers, but then the community's not bought into that person, so that person's basically set up for failure. So it takes a little bit of us kind of, this is me talking about myself. This is not me pointing fingers at other people, but it takes me as an individual to kind of set aside my pride and go, no, this person was chosen to be the lead on this particular element. It's not BDFL of the whole project. It's just we're entrusting them with this. We're going to back them and demonstrate that through our engineering time that we spend on it. That's kind of the mentality I have. I don't know who that council is. I was originally thinking it was a single individual. I just don't know. That might be too tricky. But I think if it gets more than 3, now you have too many cooks in the kitchen,
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if that the list we have on the Jupyter AI contrib still makes sense right now, because if I remember correctly, it was kind of created at the time when packages were split into different repositories just to have some kind of structure. But I don't know if right now we still need something like this, or if we should just kind of reboot the whole governance around the Jupyter AI project.
Zach was already proposing a reboot of the governance around the Jupyter AI project by proposing an incorporation into Jupyter.
But I was thinking about this much more of less about a governance question and more about a subcommittee who's just we're all opting into saying their authority. So it's less of a formal authority and more of we're delegating to you as this is what you're going to spend your time doing. It also means that those people should spend more time designing than they should engineering, probably. They can do both, but ideally we really need that design pushed forward. And so I would rather use their time for that if they're going to choose between engineering and that. And so
I agree that joining Jupyter is not a precondition for getting opinionated group to move forward on the design. It would be maybe easier if that was already in place, but certainly you shouldn't block these things to move in parallel.
Yeah.
I am curious, just your hot take, Jeremy, Zach, whoever else is sort of in both the Jupyter Light AI and the Jupyter AI code bases. Um, how do you technically see an evolution happening? And I didn't realize part of this is preconditioned on like what design are we building toward, which components from which project are most natural to push forward. But do you see like where you stand right now, that there's components in Jupyter AI, there's components in Jupyter AI, and we make them work together? Do you see one of them saying, do you see us abandoning one but adopting good ideas into the other? Like technically, how do you see a consolidation moving forward?
Good, David.
Yeah, so I mentioned some of these details on the Jupyter AI 3.2 proposal thread.
Okay.
But basically, the idea is definitely to have them merged and basically rework Jupyter AI's architecture to allow for personas to be defined on the front end. So in terms of like the technical details, this would probably live somewhere on the Jupyter AI Persona Manager package. So that's like what basically reads the list of like package entry points and loads AI personas defined as Python files from the backend. What we want to do is long term, like basically standardize these APIs to work regardless of whether you have a Python backend powering the server or not. And the great mention of like some of the work we've done for Jupyter AI 3.1 already, because I've made some API changes that sort of build towards that future. Let me share the PR link here. But basically, I'm moving a lot of this stuff, like instead of having like specific Python APIs for this, we are basically going to rely on Jupyter Chat and like the YChat shared model that's being used across both the front end and the back end. So for example, like the way that personas are being mentioned, that's now included in the message metadata. So the Jupyter AI Persona Manager, we standardize that now. And also like does a persona report the list of models they have, the list of settings options, their token usage, slash commands, all this stuff that's also been moved to the awareness channel. So I'm cutting Jupyter AI 3.1 pre-release right now. But yeah, like I think we're on the path there. It's just like there's a lot of technical work to do, and probably there are going to be more technical questions that come up as we're making progress here. But I would say overall, we're definitely making progress towards supporting that. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, and by the way, like I do meet with some of the people working on Jupyter Light AI, most notably from QuantStack. We meet regularly once a week, so like we are still talking about this. Yeah, like we're gonna keep chugging along, get this done. I'm not targeting this for any specific minor release because to me it's like still too ambiguous, right? Like there's still too many unanswered questions. I don't want to set a timeline and be like, hey, this is going to be in 3.3, and then we delay 3.3 for 4 months because there turns out there was way more work involved than we thought, right? Zach?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I do think that that's like we're still talking about technical solutions here, though. And I think that like I actually interpreted Jason's question differently, not about how do you bring the code bases together, but kind of how do you get to one experience that people install, and that's the experience that's like marketed and pushed and you know and 90% of our users use. And then there's the like 10% usage, which might be big players, right? Like, you know, you might have these large tech companies who are part of the foundation who are very interested in making this thing extremely customizable and configurable, you know, and might want to swap out their own components underneath. And so you need to engineer the actual APIs in such a way where that's possible for them. But right now we're spending so much time on that and not on the 90% of users who just want like a really simple, intuitive experience right out the front end. And so we're losing people in that race, basically. And so I think, that we have this hard problem, and this is true of Jupyter all along. Like, we've always been like, you build this experience and people get excited about the experience and they start using it on day one. And then we really build an architecture underneath it over time, and it evolves over time in such a way that it becomes like core libraries for interactive computing, or in this case, AI with interactive computing, or whatever you want to call it. So we need to do both, but I think right now, like, what would be ideal is that we had a single Jupyter AI install that users get. That's super easy. It's very intuitive. It's kind of aligned with what they're expecting, which is a lot of the feedback we're getting right now is it's not that. And so, it's a complicated system to install. And
but there is also, I think, related to how people want to use the models they have access to. So, for example, Jupyter AI works really well with existing coding harnesses, right? So you can just use the Copilot if you want, Codex, Cloud, or anything that is, for example, using a subscription. But this will never work in the browser, at least not right now, which is the use case that Jupyter AI tries to address. It's like being able to access those models from the browser. So here, the technical limitation is quite important, actually, because you cannot just reuse the existing binaries that are on your system, or even the subscription that you may be paying for. So there are these kind of users, like maybe hobbyists or like individuals wanting to use the AI provider they pay for. And then there may be also users who are part of bigger organizations, and then everything is happening at a higher level. Maybe they are behind some kind of unified access to any kind of models. And for them, it's just a matter of an API call. And in that case, just a Jupyter Node or Jupyter Lite AI is enough to work, except that you will get a different harness than what you would get, for example, if you'd be using open code or Pi or something like that. So I think that's what makes it also difficult to kind of design like to have all of those use cases available together, like, because at some point people will have to make a choice, right? That they won't be able to use only one option. Well, I mean, they won't be able to use like a single option for everything. At some point, they will probably have to make a choice between whether they want to use the harness that already exists, right, or on their machine, or use the raw API codes to the provider API start.
Vitor?
Yeah, just wanted to mention that in the time, for those of us who didn't realize that the call had moved, Fernando was here and he mentioned that in his project they also have access to a lot of people with doing research on stuff, and that maybe they will have to look at harnesses as well. And you mentioned that that's probably a smaller gap to close versus frontier models than the actual models themselves, right? So I'm not entirely sure what the landscape is for open harnesses, but there's potentially work that can be done there to kind of get an open harness to help close that gap, so we don't have to maintain that ourselves in Jupyter Node. So, which would hopefully then also be solvable in the browser if that is needed with the browser supplied models that you talked about, Jeremy. I don't know if that sounds feasible at all, or.
I think it is feasible. I think one of the challenges is like if you try to build a front end agent, I think like overall there's just less maturity and existing work that you can build off of on the JavaScript side. I think like the people who have been working on Jupyter Light AI have done an amazing job doing what they can to get these agent harnesses running there. But the fact of the matter is like there are just like most of the packages are going to support Python as a first class citizen, and not all of them support JavaScript, TypeScript as a first class citizen. So I think like that will change in the future because I mean, it's not really rocket science to build like an API. It just like takes more time for the specification to stabilize. Like
I feel like a lot of the
something I'm
harnesses.
curious.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I just want to say that a lot of the harnesses we use now for the ACP stuff is Node packages, right? So, which aren't built for the
Mm,
browser, but they're still like JavaScript based, which is a little bit
actually,
strange again.
that's a good point. Agent Client Protocol has a TypeScript SDK now. I wonder if that's how we should implement Jupyter Light. Now that I think about it, because there is a path, right? Like right now, we expect all the agents to be defined on the back end, and they're using Agent Client Protocol. But Agent Client Protocol also ships a TypeScript SDK, and that would make it a lot easier to install agents, right? Because then they wouldn't have to install any like system requirements to get this working. Like a user wouldn't have to install like Claude agent ACP package locally and in their environment, make sure it's executable, and then like start Jupyter Lab there to use Claude. Like imagine if we just vendored the like Claude agent ACP harness directly as a JavaScript package that's bundled with the lab extension, then it would just work for everyone as long as you have a Claude API key. I guess the one tricky thing is then you need to handle auth. Like one of the shortcuts that we took, one of the corners that we cut for Jupyter AI was like, because we're using like server-side ACP harnesses, those just read the configuration you have locally on that server. So we basically just like completely avoided the authentication problem, but we need to have a better story around that. And I think that's where like a Jupyter AI secrets manager would make sense, or just Jupyter secrets manager in general. I think there's already existing work on that, but yeah. So like there's a couple of steps, right? But like what I think like the overall picture that I want to paint here is like there's definitely a path there. It's just like we need to figure out like what does that story look like? Um, but yeah, overall, I absolutely agree with all this feedback here. Um, this is exactly what we want to tackle in Jupyter AI 3.2. Uh, right now, we're just trying to get the UI right. And the way I want to phrase this is like Jupyter AI 3.1, we're going to deliver a better experience out of the box. It might not be perfect. I think we're going to still need to refine it and iterate on it, but it's going to be better than what we have now. Who's we? I guess like the Jupyter AI users community. Um,
I think Zach is hammering down on his point of we should have a small group that's really pushing forward on designing the experience.
yeah, so right now, like I feel pretty confident in these changes because they're building on a lot of user feedback that we spent months and months gathering, and we've had ongoing discussions about all of this. Um, And I also get some validation from like the AWS side where like there are AWS customers who use Jupyter AI and they give a lot of feedback. And I think like if you all could see that type of feedback, you would be surprised how aligned it is with open source. Like it is basically they're complaining about the same things. Like, why can't I switch to a model, right? Like, why do we have this concept of that mentioning personas? Uh, Things like that. And that's all being fixed right now. I can do a quick load demo of what we have if people are interested, but I'm also cutting the pre-release right now. So yeah, Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just to carefully walk this line though. So to be clear, I don't doubt the we was not meant to be as cheeky as it maybe sounded in the chat. But what my point before this was, and I think it was before you joined, David, is what is tricky here, specifically around experience, around UX, is it isn't clear. It's not explicit who owns the decisions in Jupyter AI around experience. And experience is actually, I think, the most critical thing to get right. I think implicitly, the AWS team owns it. And so, and I think we have to be careful there, because what it does is it prevents people from feeling like they actually have an opportunity to speak into where the experience should go. So I don't doubt the designs that you're mentioning are good and that they are backed on research. I would argue that others in this group have had also that amount of research and feedback on Jupyter AI that you're missing out on too. Like, it could be similar, it could be different. But I think it's less about trusting that what you have. I'm excited to see the demo. I think it's going to be great. Like, I don't doubt what you built. However, what's challenging here is it's not received input at all from the community here. It might be aligned with what the community said, but they don't feel authority. Others in this call may not feel authority to be able to speak into that. And having the authority be kind of distributed across teams is less about like a power struggle. It's more about the sustainability of this project going forward, having multiple folks kind of own that process. It's both process and decision. And so that's the tricky thing here. Is it's more about, we might end up in the same place and the same results. But if folks don't feel, it's not even feel, if folks aren't involved in both the process and the decision all along the way, what's going to happen is it's only going to be AWS folks, for example, left working on it over the long term. And that's not a good thing for the project, because it's not a sustainable model, right? What happens if AWS decides they want to disengage from this project? This project becomes frozen. So we're trying to figure out how do you get more people both involved, both in the process of choosing where the project should go and in the ultimate decision on the other side of that process. And those people need to have equal authority in that, I think, in order for Jupyter AI, that project, to sustain over the long term, regardless of what organizations come in and out of it. So that's my only critique on that particular part, is that it's not that I don't trust that you guys have done your research and worked really hard and done the design. It's just that whole process was completely opaque to all of us. Even though the proposal was opened, which you got, like, that's a really great step in the right direction, and we could engage in the proposal for sure. But it's not clear to me that proposal, if people engage, that would translate to changes on the proposal other than minor like tweaks. That there wasn't full, like, I actually disagree with this vision. Here's this other vision that we could do. I don't know if that would land. And so that's the part that I want to be careful of, is that it's got to be clear that it isn't one team who's owning both the process and the decision and just taking feedback. I think we need to figure out how to make that be more distributed across the community. One of the ideas we said was have a council of 3, probably should be represented all from different organizations, have both the authority of that process and decision making.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I want to be respectful.
It wasn't I also want to, so like, I want to set the tone straight here. And I think this is a great discussion to have in the community call, sort of call out the elephant in the room, which is like, I think like on paper, we do have a governance model for Jupyter AI, but historically, I think it's okay to say this in a public call. I think it's just the truth. Like, de facto, I have been sort of serving as the benevolent dictator for life on Jupyter AI. And I also agree that needs to change. I want that to change. I want to assuage fears that like AWS is like trying to take ownership of Jupyter AI. If anything, it's actually been like, in my opinion, they have not been contributing enough. Like, I don't want like people to think that like this is like some like takeover attempt. Like, nobody at AWS. It's so hard for me to get people like in AWS to contribute back. Like, I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever. Like, essentially, it's just me and like the other people like I directly work with who can contribute when they have time. We have done our best to address user feedback. Like, I do think it's great to take a look at the Jupyter AI 3.2 proposal, like there, like people made some call outs and we made really big edits to the proposal in response to that. So like, I don't want people to think that like, oh, well, like if I leave feedback, it's just going to be totally unheard. It's going into a black hole. Like it's more like I get like something on the order of like 30 GitHub notifications a day. So like it's hard for me to respond unless it's in a centralized channel, right? So that's like why those discussion threads exist. And I think there's also like tech, just like really just like practical difficulties. Like even though I really like this new modular architecture we have, and it's also what's going to be enabling Jupyter Light AI to eventually be merged. It also just creates these like uh, technical challenges of like, okay, I have a design in this one repo. Now, like, how do I communicate that to everyone else, right? Like, it's not that like I'm trying to keep the secret. It's more like I don't want to create two different GitHub issues for every single thing that I do. Um, so like I think some of this is like we need better contributing documentation. I think that's a huge part of it is like a lot of people right now, they still frankly just don't even understand what the sub package architecture is. We have some contributing docs on that, but let's be real, a lot of that is AI generated. It needs like a thorough review, a full pass. And I have like tried to dedicate some time towards that. The V 3.1 release is taking time away from that, but I have this PR out here um, for adding, I've set up this like, I've just like played around with this locally. I haven't actually tested this, but the idea is that like we can add every single sub package as a Git submodule, and then every repo can have its own documentation, but that all gets like automatically merged into the upstream documentation prior to every release. Uh, I need to sort out like the actual like how that's actually going to work and play out, but like that is something we want to address. And I think like the last piece of this puzzle is I think that like contributors need more help getting started. Like there's a lot of context that's sort of just living in our heads right now. And basically for somebody to onboard themselves as a contributor to Jupyter AI, it would probably take them a full day or two. I think one thing that could help is like preparing and vendoring some kind of agent development environment where basically it's an environment where agents spawn with the context they need to work on Jupyter AI. And basically, like, it can help translate, like, okay, I want to add this feature to Jupyter AI. It's like, it tells you, like, what code changes are needed and then, like, opens, like, draft PRs that other people can test, right? So this will let people jump directly from, like, ideation directly to prototyping and sharing those prototypes with us. I think that could be really helpful. Um, yeah, and I am working on that. Like again, it's hard because I'm balancing Jupyter AI. I might just publish it even though I don't think it's really quite ready yet. But this is like the same like dev setup I mentioned at the dev summit in San Francisco, if anybody here was there. Um, yeah. I see your feedback, Adam. Yeah, submodules are not really intuitive, but it does make sense for our use case where we just want to vendor like version documentation for every sub package. Like basically we what the PR I open has is like it basically automatically checks out the commit at like a specific version tag, and then it can bump those version tags accordingly. So basically, when we publish v3.1, it updates every sub package to that version tag that's like listed into the dependencies, and then automatically builds the docs from there. Yeah, it is tricky to do it yourself. That's why it's like all being automated away in a GitHub workflow to update the docs every time.
Okay, yeah, if the machinery works smoothly enough that I, as a consumer of the package and occasional builder, don't have to think about it, fair enough.
Yeah, that's what the development environment will enable. This is something I've set up locally. I think I need to contribute to upstream. This might be the time for it, but like just real fast, right? Real fast, I can show like what I have right now is like basically it's like a CMUX environment where they have like scripts for creating new workspaces that work in parallel. And then in every one of these workspaces, they can like automatically figure out like which packages do I need to clone. Like for example, like inside this repos folder, I have like every single one of the Jupyter AI packages. And then it's like, okay, for this change, like which packages do I need to edit? And then it can automatically build the development environment, create a work tree for every one of the repos it needs to edit, and then like automatically do the dev installation. I think that was like a huge missing step in the contribution flow that like I do want to fix, right? I want to make it easier for other people to contribute. I just want to, it's just like right now it's just mainly a question of bandwidth. Like I need to get Jupyter AI 3.1 out the door, and yeah, this
Yeah, yeah. Just to pick up on one of the things that Zach was putting in chat, given the proposals, like, all right, Zach is also discussing how to kind of, the proposal is approved or whatever, but given, let's say we have the proposal that was accepted, the question then is like, if you're saying that, oh, you want to go away from being like the single point that everything has to go through, the question then is there a good way to kind of segregate out the work that has been agreed upon so that other people can help with implementing certain parts so that we can do more in parallel, right? So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with how things is being done. I haven't been too involved. I'm just saying that's if you're switching from one person is doing everything to a multi-person thing, that's the hard part of figuring out how to do things in parallel and kind of deconflict stuff so that you don't get too many kind of like merge conflicts, basically, especially over different components. So yeah, once we kind of have an agreed upon roadmap, that's kind of the next step to kind of figure out how to which bits are logically kind of separate and how can they be split out over people who volunteer to do the work.
I think it just my like everything you said, David, is like I come from and trying to express this is out of sympathy and empathy of I think everything you described of you're listening to feedback and responding and putting a lot of hours and getting a lot of notifications is actually like highlighting the problem that I'm trying to highlight here. It's not saying that you're not doing the work to keep up with all the work, all the stuff coming in and receiving that feedback and doing literally the right thing from the position you hold. Is that the position altogether is flawed, which is your team has essentially positioned yourself solely responsible for this thing, and you have to take all this beating, all this stuff, and that's not a shared load. A different pattern that we've seen in a project to avoid that scenario where it's basically solely dependent on you to decide when this thing reaches final state, given all the feedback, and then also have to implement it. Is that proposal from day one was 3 people authoring it together. It might have been written by one person, but 3 people basically say we're gonna share ownership over this thing. You know, we do this with JEPs all the time where it's co-authored by 3 people. Probably one person wrote the draft, but 2 people or 3 other people basically become co-responsible individuals on it. And that prevents a scenario where one person feels like they have to do the solo responses to everything that comes in. Yeah, it's shared among a few people. And then when it goes into implementation stage, there are people on the hook to go and implement. That's not just one organization or person. And that just ensures, again, if that person has to go out for 6 months because of, some personal leave or something, they don't feel this guilt or this power or this position of having to block the community or block the work. That's shared. So anytime I hear someone basically describing the amount of stress they feel because there's a single bottleneck, or an organization feels that because there's a single bottleneck, to me, that's a smell of something that needs to be pushed against, right, and corrected, so that you remove that pressure and that guilt and that it's not a sustainable model from that person. So this is not you're not doing amazing work, or you're not listening to the community. I think you are. I think you guys are doing an amazing job, especially given the amount of work and pressure that comes in on this project. I'm just saying that I think it's the current structure is kind of flawed from the beginning. It's ideally what we could do is take that pressure off of you guys. And so, yeah, and what VR said is true too, of like, then we can break up engineering and it can be a shared load and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the tricky part is like, how do we maintain, at least make sure like the quality bar doesn't drop as a result of this? And that's not saying that like people can't write good code. It's more like I acknowledge like one of the tricky things about Jupyter AI is not just that the architecture is a bit complex, but the tech stack is really unique, right? Like there's a lot of things, like YJS is extremely powerful, but it's also kind of a foot gun because it is so powerful, right? Like it's very unclear. I think like we need more, again, this is something we need more contributor documentation for, but I think it's very easy to like the code yourself into an architecture that is like fundamentally broken. um, what I mean by that is like I think like some of the work we've done on Jupyter AI v3.1 is a great example where it's like we were trying to use like initially as like to get the list of personas and all of the models for it. We were constantly polling the server side using all these REST requests, making like one request every single second for every single user. And it's like, wait a minute, we didn't even need to do that because like the YJS awareness channel already gives you a WebSocket that you can just send broadcast anything from the server side to everyone else, right? Like, again, maybe I'm getting too lost in technical details here, but it's like I'm okay with people, I'm okay with others like just going ahead and merging PRs and cutting pre-releases for that and then telling others like, hey, try this out. Like we've added a new feature. Everyone else agreed. This happened while you were like like out of office. But I do think like it would be helpful for us to get together and make executive decisions as a team when it comes to like official releases. But in terms of like code, right? Like code changes are cheap, they're reversible. They're cheap now in the age of AI. They're also reversible. Like to me, I'm totally fine with that. I would love for that to be the norm, in fact. Like I don't want people to um yeah, I don't want people to feel like blocked on that. Yeah.
Um, seems like that discussion died, so I just wanted to quickly ask Zach. On the workshop, there was this discussion on the lower level side of things that was going to go into Jupyter Server and whatever. So there was some discussions on the issues about like one PR being subsumed by another or whatever. Do we have that? Because we made it like a to-do list of and then kind of the order that things needed to happen to. Is that list somewhere?
It isn't.
I just
It's
wanted
a
to
good
check
question.
what the list was and where I need to put my effort to help move things along so that you're not blocked on anything.
Totally. The list is in. Let me see if I can find. It's in one of the Jupyter AI call or Jupyter AI hack MDs. If you scroll back, because I think we took notes while we were there, so it's probably there. It has not been published anywhere other than that.
Does Tricky put it on an issue or something like that? Do you have it?
I don't think we put it on an issue, but it's what I can let me put that on my list today and see if I can drum it up and put it into an issue. I think that'd be a good idea.
Because then also anybody who wasn't there, if they spot any issues with it, they can comment on it.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Yeah, let me do that. And then I do have a draft of the execute endpoint JEP sitting on a fork of the JEP repo in my org. So like I've made progress on that. I just haven't had bandwidth to finalize that and just get it open.
Yeah, because that's basically what I'm saying is that I know these things are happening, but I struggle sometimes to keep track of it.
Me too.
Because there's so many repos. So if there was like a central issue where all of that was tracked, I could check that one, and then I could just go. Yeah, great.
I'll
Thank you very much.
I'll do that today. Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you, Vidar. That is the right play. All right.
So we are at time now. Thanks everyone for the great conversation. Goodbye, internet.
Mhm.